Hello everybody, I'm Derek Arden and welcome to my 41st web chat show, the 41st one we've done since lockdown. I'm delighted to have with me today Steve Head. Steve and I first met at the Singapore Speakers Conference quite a long time ago, where we were both speaking. We've both been inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame, which means we are a PSAE in the Professional Speaking Association here. Steve, it's an absolute pleasure for you to be with us. I know you do a lot of work with the NHS, a lot of work on resilience, but before we talk about that, will you tell us a little bit about you?
Yes, I'd be happy to, just to take a couple of minutes. So yeah, I'm Steve Head from Gateshead, but I'm actually living in Newbury in Berkshire, and I've lived for many years. You can probably tell by my accent. I'm from the northeast, married to my wife Abby for 27 years last week. So we celebrated by taking the bins out together. So something a bit special this year, because there's nothing else we can do really. So married 27, Abby's from Newcastle, we're both Geordies, and my children are born and bred in Berkshire, so they speak completely differently from us. My son's a magician, so he does close-up magic. My daughter is a dancer. She's been 3 years at vocational dance school. But just a little bit of insight, actually, which will link into some of the things I'm going to share, depending on what Derek asked me and what I get a chance to share with you. 15th of March was a big day in our family's life, because that's when Boris Johnson said, from tomorrow, you can't go out and be in a room with other people. And given I've done this job for 18 years and it completely relies upon people being in rooms, it struck me that I might not be able to do any work. So I rang my client, which happened to be an NHS event the next day, and I said, are we still on for tomorrow, given what Boris has just said? And she said it's cancelled. And my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Every event that was planned in April, May and June just went, we need to move them. And my wife is a Zumba instructor, and all the Zumba stopped. And my son is a magician, as I've said, and all the weddings that he performs at were moved or cancelled. And my daughter rang 3 days later to say they've graduation's cancelled, I'm coming home. 3 years of training, 3 years of everything that you've done, broken toes, broken ankles, intensive training, just shut down. And that was, to be honest with you, the hardest thing for us, I think, as a family, because I'm 56, I've been around the block, I've dealt with recessions and 15% mortgage rates and many things in life. Although this is a very extraordinary one, you sort of know you can ride it in a way, you know you're going to get through somehow. Whereas, you know, seeing Anna struggle, I thought I was pretty gutted for her. And it turns out that my job is, for the last 18 years, has been sharing up strategies with organisations, a lot of healthcare, on resilience. And if ever there was a time to use it on your own family, that was that time. So that's where we were. And over the last 12 weeks, like many of us, I got used to looking at a screen with lots of faces on it, doing 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours of this a day. I don't know if you find this, but it's so exhausting, sitting still, looking at a telly. I'd rather be in a room with you. I'd far rather, even though it's a hassle to drive places, but this is what it is. And I guess the stuff I share, the stuff I talk about, the stuff I've been asked to do the last few weeks, seems to be helping a little bit. Certainly with my family, it's been quite helpful. So if I can share any tips or strategies tonight to help you with whatever you're up to, I'd be glad to do it. But that's basically me. That's who I am. That's what I do. And that's where I am. So crack on.
Steve, that's brilliant. Now, I've seen you do a very impactful and very simple thing on all the courses I've worked with you on, and I've seen you do it at the Speakers Association. Is that something that would be useful for you to do for us today?
Yeah. I paused because I'm thinking, well, yes, it would, but I'm just thinking about the context. So I think I know what you mean. So basically, when I do an event, I'm not going to take you through a keynote tonight. That's not the plan. I'm not going to take you through a sort of a storyline. But when we got into March, when the lockdown happened, I'd sort of in my head said, I'm not going to bother doing anything online. I'll ride it out. Hopefully we'll get back in September. As it turns out, that's probably optimistic. And then I got a lot of emails and tweets coming out, because I've been doing this a long time, and I've got quite a lot of contacts saying, Steve, we need your stuff. But they weren't just saying that, they were asking for this very specific thing I think you're talking about, Derek. So I'll show you what it is. So this is my calling card. This is my brand. This is what I've used for like nearly 2 decades. And it has an impact, people remember it, and it seems to be very, very relevant. So every time I do an event now, once I've explained who I am, I ask the audience, and if you want, we can even play this game now, actually. We could do this as a bit of fun. So if you can open your chat box on your screen, I've got mine open now, so you can just type a comment. So we'll make it a little bit interactive. It should be simple because only a handful of you. So, and what I'm going to ask you to do, if you've seen me present before, so Vera, you've seen me, you'll have definitely seen me do this, right? But if you've never seen me present before, I just want your reaction. So what I ask you to do is type a comment, not a question, but just a comment on what you see, effectively giving me feedback on a visual I will show you. This is my high-tech visual. So when you see it, just type a comment. There might be a slight delay, and I'll just wait a second or two till you type something up. You ready? So just look at it and then just type away.
I'm watching the chat box, Steve.
Sorry?
I'm watching the chat box.
I'm watching it as well. So I'm going to look at the chat box to see what comments you write about my work. I'm expecting some feedback on this. Now, Vera, you can't do anything. You've got to sit quiet and do nothing. You're out of it. Algebra, I like that. Let me take maths. I'm actually so impressed with the observational skills of this group. Yeah, you've got a high caliber audience, Derek, definitely. Right, you can stop there, that's brilliant. Do you know what I love? I did this for 1,500 opticians. The very first webinar I ever did, I was asked to do a webinar by a friend of mine called Imran Hakim, who runs the Hakim Group. And he had 1,500 people online. The little joke behind that was he booked me because he knows me as a speaker, and he booked me for this online thing. And about 2 days before, he said, he texted me, he says, Steve, what's the maximum number of people you've ever had on a webinar? And I texted him back and say, I've never done a webinar. And I think he sort of was a bit shocked by that because he assumed I had. And he says, well, you'll have the most you've ever had. We've got over 1,000 people logged in. So when 1,000 people get asked to type a comment, you can't read them because they just fly up and down. But when there's only a few, I can see last one's wrong, fourth is odd, etc. That is the standard response, right, from showing that visual. And of course, you know, people like me, what we're about, that is where the attention goes. My brand, my next book, in fact, will be called The 149 Effect. And it's my metaphor that I've shared with thousands of nurses in the last few weeks and over the last 10, 15 years on what do you focus on? We tend to focus on the 15. We focus on the thing that's wrong. My daughter's school has 25 students in her year, right? 25 students who all got told 13 weeks ago, you will not graduate, or you will graduate, but it will be online. You will not get to see agents. You will not dance on a cruise ship. You will not dance on the West End. You will not, because the system is shutting down for the next 6 months. So I said to her about 6-8 weeks ago, do you want me to do an event just for you and your colleagues on me? I'll deliver it for you if the teachers are happy. So we got them all 25. I was looking at their little faces. They're all 19, 20, 21 years old. And I got right at the start. I said, write some comments. And literally all I saw in that right-hand column was wrong, 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 wrong. Last one's wrong, maths and yuck. That's what they wrote down. And I thought, brilliant. Why did they write that? Why do we not talk about the 3 that are right? Why don't we say 3 are right? You're a genius. I love your shirt. You're a handsome man too. Well done, Stevie boy. You've got potential. They go, last one's wrong, you thick Geordie. And that's all I ever get when I show this to crowds. And I'm wondering, especially under pressure, why we can't say anything good. Because when we're under pressure, we always go for that. My job is to help people, especially during challenging times, to see something good, to lift their eyesight and look for what's working. And there is a lot of potential, a lot of things can work, but in that mindset, people are doing nothing. And it's the stagnation. And if you're in the NHS and you're a frontline carer, and you're seeing genuine death and trauma and challenge, a senior nurse said to me the other day, Steve, she says, when we're at the peak of COVID, which was a few weeks back now, she said we'd have nurses sitting on a bed with a phone with the family saying goodbye to a loved one. And literally in tears because they couldn't be with them. She says in the past, this nurse would be there, but she'd be out the way. The family would be there saying the final respects to their loved ones. This is the challenge. And the nurse is supposed to feel good. So I'm not saying when I show this slide, ignore bad things, because that would be ridiculous. I would never say to a group of nurses, ignore bad things. If a patient's lying on the floor, you'll go, well, at least the rest are in beds. I'm a governor of a secondary school. If somebody sells marijuana at the school gates, we don't say, is it good quality? We stop them selling it. It doesn't take a genius to work that out. But if you want to feel good mentally, emotionally, we have to find positivity in the world we're in. And the journey for my daughter is from, I can't do anything, there's no opportunities, there's no dancing, the ships are grounded, I can't believe I trained for 3 years, broken toes, broken ankles, what was the point? To, I can get my show reel, I can keep eating well, I can train every day, I can do online classes, I can connect with agents online. I can go on to seminars. I can learn to do social media marketing. So that changes the way she feels. That makes her feel worse. That stagnates us. That moves us. That's the message. I use it every day of my life. I can build 16 hours of material on the back of it, and it's worth it because it makes me a few bob. So that's how I basically build my seminar.
That was great, Steve. Just the one I wanted. Glad you had it at your fingertips.
Well, I hope it was. If it was anything else, I haven't got anything else.
I know that. Now, come on, tell us what's been going on over the last 3-4 weeks. Where are the emotions? You've been working really hard, talking to chief nurses all around the country. I know you network like mad. You network better than anybody else I know. You're always on your texts. But what have you been doing on Zoom to help these people that are doing a fantastic job for us, the key workers? What have you been doing to help build their resilience, change their mindset from all this, all the things that we don't really appreciate that you've just outlined?
Well, it's not that complicated. I mean, I don't know how you guys normally market. Just so you know, my thing has never really been that technical. I'm not one of these people that sends a newsletter out. I'm not really great at, the technology side. I've got better at it because I've learned to use this stuff and chat to my computer. But I've always quite liked this. I know it's technical. It's a phone. But it's got 2,500-3,000 contacts in it. And I've always done the same thing, not just because of COVID. I've always been very personal. So I would text a chief nurse at Salford or Southampton or wherever it is, and I'd say, how are you getting on? They would come back and say, it's really tough time, Steve. And I would say, look, well, I've got some really good material which I've used for years. Most of them have seen this, and I'll go, so it's building on the 149 principle, how we shift the mindset into some form of positivity. And then inevitably that results in an agreement, and we get something organized for 5, 6, 7, 800,000 people who log in to just take a break. And I call the event taking care of yourself and your future. That was the name on it, which by the way, I used a similar title back in 2008-9 when we had the recession back then. Because when people feel out of control, it's given them a mindset to move into control. In terms of what's been happening in the NHS, it's been interesting because it's a fast evolution. It goes from looking to the crisis and the threatened peak, the peak that didn't quite happen but still caused an intensity of effort and emotion, and then coming out the other side and the fear of a second peak, and they call it recovery and restoration now, or reset and restoration. That's the Vera smile in there. See that, you've heard that. The recovery restoration phase. And so I wrote this thing and I said how to take, the original title was how to take control of yourself and your future. I've changed it to taking care of yourself and your future. And it's really working with either finance staff or other support teams, frontline staff, the frontline carers. Sometimes it's a mixed audience. And I share tips and strategies about accountability, about the best way to get your mind in the right place, and also how to manage the stresses and pressures of home life. So what people like, I think, is when you share something like that, it's not about being a nurse or a doctor or a finance manager. It's about being a person who's got a mother who's 75 they're worried about, or it's about their kid who's lost their A-levels, or it's about their challenged relationship at home. The famous phrase at the start of this was, we're all in the same storm, but all in different boats. And I think that's true, because my boat's got a garden. And if you have 8 weeks of sunny weather, you're lucky enough to go outside. But if your boat's a 2-bedroom flat and you're a one-parent family with 3 kids and you're supposed to work from home, different boats. So trying to give people tools and techniques to manage their own minds under pressure. And that's basically what I did. So that was the structure. That was the way I marketed it. It's very, very personal to people I've built relationships with. I was a salesman in the pharmaceutical industry for 16 years, and many years ago sold life insurance on commission only. And I've always believed that sales, as with all, just in my heart and soul, is about relationships. It's all about who you know and the relationships you have, which is why I don't do blanket, Steve's coming to town, do you want some? Because I think, well, who's Steve? Delete that. But if I text people I've built relationships with and say, look, I might be able to help you out with your team, let me know if you're interested. It almost always leads to a conversation, and the percentage of success on that is greater. So, and then of course the structure of the event is determined by what they want. They will tell me this is our unique situation in our trust. So a hospital is different from a community trust. So you've got to be prepared to adapt each session. So I literally write a different event for every session. That's the core of it. So it starts with that. but then the journey changes to suit, which is what all decent speakers, I guess, would do anyway. You wouldn't just say the same thing every time, but that's principally what I'm doing. And I think the journey now is the fear of whether nurses are going to have to go, because they're trying to redeploy nurses and doctors back to their original jobs. But one thing I wrote, and I was contributing to a blog the other day, Andy Laparta, I don't know if you know him. He's a great bloke. I like Andy a lot. And he sent me a message and he says, is it true that the silos have gone within the NHS? There's often been quite, departmental stuff. And I said, what I'm finding is that is true. And all the chief nurses saying we've never seen so much kindness, so much camaraderie, so much cooperation, people stepping up, finance staff making masks for, everybody's doing it. Just say, yeah, what do we need? And in a crisis, that's what human beings are good at. The worry is in the longer term, when we go back to the next normal, which I like more than the new normal, because there is a next stage and a next stage, next stage. Can we hang on to all that wonderful camaraderie and support? So that's going to be the next stage. Leadership, making sure we don't dissolve away all this wonderful positivity and support we've created in the NHS. And I think there's probably some lessons to be learned from that. So yeah, absolutely, that's my job. That's what I'm doing. And it's not very technical. It's literally just personal contact with people I know.
Brilliant, Steve. So give us a little taste of what you do and help these people change their mindset who are under this tremendous pressure, mental pressure particularly, but also physical pressure. Give us a little taster for what you do on something you did last week to help them.
All right, okay, so I'll do a simple one for you. Hang on, I need to just look for me post-it pad. That, by the way, I should point out, this is quite funny. I did an event for PSA.
Professional Speaking Association.
Professional Speaking Association, sorry, yes, from the abbreviation. And I was doing 45 minutes, and quite a lot of speakers have, understandably so, have gone and got green screens and various other things, that they need, and banners and branding and all that sort of stuff. Well, and new microphones and amazing things, which is great. And I mean, credit to them for getting all the gear. When I'm in a room with people, obviously if it's a big room, like 300 people, I tend to use PowerPoint because they can't see it otherwise. But when I'm in a room where I'm close, 50 or less, this is my favorite medium. I love this. So this was $49.99 for this, just so you know, if you want to get one, Amazon, with a pad of paper. So good little investment, because I find that just pens and a pad and me, and if you are doing any online stuff, and I don't know how much of this you are doing or, organizing your lives, definitely, if you can, do it standing up. If you're the presenter, I mean, it's okay in a meeting sitting down and having a chat, but I think it's much more energizing if the person presenting is doing something rather than sitting. And I don't know if you've seen a lot of this, seeing people like present like that. That's quite a common view. And I just think we should just be, present and whatever. Anyway, quick one for you. This is easy. I'll show you this. I've used this. In my background, I was a pharmaceutical manager for many years, and I ran a generics pharmaceutical company for a couple of years. Set one up from scratch many years ago when I was a young lad. And in my life, I've worked by two principles. This is one of the techniques I've been talking around. Simplistic thing. I didn't invent this at all. Do it. That's it. That's it there. That's it, an I, and that's a C. And I use simple techniques, as I said, with a post-it pad. When I was a manager in pharma, when I've coached clients, I've been a sports coach and a business coach for 30, 40 years, since I was a teenager. And I currently coach the England Wheelchair Rugby League squad. So whenever I'm dealing with anybody who's dealing with pressure, stress, challenge, and they get into a bad place, a challenging place, I always do this bit first. I've got about 7 or 8 coaching sessions coming up in the next few weeks, and I can guarantee this will help. This will be part of the process we'll go through. So that says GIOYC, which stands for get it off your chest. Right? Very technical, this. If I've lost you, let me know. Right? So the first thing I do is say, what's bothering you? What's upsetting you? What you're frustrated by? What are you angry about? What's annoying? What's happened in your world that's just getting you back up? And what tends to happen is, even if I don't get people to do that, they'll do it anyway. This is what's concerning you. That's what the C stands for. And they'll tell me all the things that bother them. All the things. And they'll just, so all those things that bother you. And if I was doing this in a workshop, I would do it on a post-it and I would say, write down on each leaf things that bother you. So I've got no income, or in my daughter's case, let's do my daughter's story. So she would go, no graduation, no auditions, no opportunities, can't train properly because the studios are closed, bam, 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 bam. You can think of 50 things she's not been able to do because of COVID, right? Which, by the way, is true. This is real. This is real parenting stuff now. And I've got to say, right, Anna, I understand that. But given where we are, what can you influence? This is what's concerning you. And I'm not saying it's not concerning you. I'm saying there are lots of things that have clearly got in your way to get what you want. But what can you do something about? Every one of us, every one of you, I don't know you at all, know that's common sense, right? Common sense. Why are we focusing on what we can't do when we should be focusing on what we can? But that's not what your brain does when it's under stress. Because under stress, your brain goes off on one and says, oh, it's a waste of time, this. What was the point of that? I lost every bit of work I had this year, arguably, till the end of the year. You know, I do about 20 gigs a month. So I'm probably looking at about 100 gigs disappeared out of my diary. I don't want that to happen. I didn't like that to happen. I didn't ask for it to happen. But I can spend all year moaning in the kitchen with my wife, I can't bloody believe this has happened to me. Oh, it's always this. But I can also go, well, all that bad stuff's happened, but what can I do something about? Well, I can buy a flip chart. And I can learn how to stand in front of a computer and just get excited anyway. And I can take some of the material I've used and share it in a different way. And I can phone a few people that might be struggling and see if they want any help. And I can organize an event, and I can, and slowly but surely things pick up. My daughter can prepare a social profile. She can learn about social media. She can eat well. She can dance on Zoom, and she can dance in the garden if she wants. And she can communicate with her ex-ballet teacher. And she can do all these wonderful things that build her life up. And guess what? The minute she starts focusing on that, so she takes the things that, of all the things that you are worried about, what can you do something about? And you focus on those. You've still got a lot of stuff to deal with, which doesn't go away, but you can focus on something. And the psychology of this is quite clever, because it does work this way. The more you focus on this inner circle, the bigger it feels. And we feel like we're in more control. And if there's one thing we need to feel at the minute, we're in control of something when the world around us is impacting us in such a way. Now, this applies in any situation, whether it's a personal loss, whether it's your business, whether it's your family. That psychology is helpful. So I basically facilitate and help people think about what's going on, what they can focus on, what they can change and challenge. And lo and behold, my daughter feels better, my family feel better, I feel better, and the business moves forward. And that's the principle. So I share that principle, and then there's another 20 things you can do on the back of it. But in essence, simplicity. I wrote this on my little thing. I've got loads of post-it notes and flashes on the wall here. You can't see them. I look really slick up here, right? But that's my main thing, right? That means something, by the way. But simplicity, right? That model is another model. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yes, Steve.
Right, this is a good one. Did this the other day. My son set up a magic business 4 years ago. I've coached people on business a lot. Forgive me if you think this is too simplistic, but it just is how the world is, right? If I was, like right now, if you're a speaker, consultant, coach, trainer, if you're offering a service to the world, sorry, those circles should be the same size, doesn't really matter. When I was coaching my son to run his business, so this business is simple. I was head of marketing for a £100 million brand years ago, and I thought marketing was complicated. Right? I thought it's really it's not. It really isn't. People make things complicated. Product or service? What's your product or service? The number of times I've talked to people who say, I'm not getting any work, or I can't. I go, what's your product or service? And they're humming heart. I don't know what's my product. I don't know. I think it's so. If you don't know what your product or service is and you can't articulate it, practice that to start with. Second thing, who's your customer? Who needs or wants that? Right? I don't know. That's the gist, right? So I'm a magician. I do close-up magic. Who's your customer? People getting married, right? Marriage, people getting married. Now you go to a wedding fair, there's magicians all over the place. When I got married, you got flowers in a car, right? Now you've got to have a magician, apparently, which is brilliant because that's what my son does for a living. So he goes to wedding fairs, he stands there, performs magic, and after every 10 couples, one of them says, oh, we'll have you at our wedding. So his market is wedding fairs and people getting married. So he's got that. So what's this? This is marketing and sales. How do I get that seen by them? That's the business. That's what that, simplicity at its absolute best. So I've got loads of people I'm coaching at the minute, people in business, and say, what's your product or service? It's that. What benefit does it bring that these people would need or want? And how to make sure they find out about it? Social media, phone calls. My methodology is text them. That's how complicated I get. Hi, chief nurse of, I offer 149 and all the things that go with it. Do your staff need it? Yes. Let's organize it. That's the basic principle. And then of course, you have to deliver. So if my son says he's a magician and he can't do magic, he'll look daft. So you better be good at it. So he's a member of the magic circle. He's got quality and talent. He just needs customers and they need to know he exists. My daughter's a dancer. She wants to dance in the West End. They need to know she exists. If they don't know she exists, she'll dance in her bedroom. If she does not, then she'll get a job because she's good. If she's no good, she won't get employed because she's not good enough. But she is talented and she's gorgeous, so she'll get a job.
Fantastic.
And I'm a motivational speaker, so I can't even stop annoying her. I have to keep reminding her she's good. So I'm an annoying father.
Steve, that's great. I'm going to come in with a couple of things there. We all know, don't we, the older we get, that life is simple and we do have to keep it simple. It's complicated by people in sales, in management, in leadership and everything else. But the old adage of KISS, keep it simple, stupid, keep it short and simple or whatever. And I just can't believe it. It was Winston Churchill that said, put things on one piece of paper. I love your style, Steve, of texting people. People look at texts when they get it. They don't look at emails. They probably haven't got the time to take a phone call, but texts work and they work for me. We've got a question in the chat box, Steve, and it's from Ryan. Is there a best time of day to change your mindset? A lot of people say it's in the morning, or is it a continual thing to do?
That's a great question, and I haven't got a clue. I'd love to say I know the answer to that. I've read an article on it. I haven't really. I can only speak for myself. You know, I know that this thing here. So that's kind of what you're saying. From there to there, victim to accountable, can't do to can do, whatever you want to call it. For me, the best time for me is in the morning. I've got to get myself up. You might have noticed. I don't know if you can see this on this. Is,
we can.
This is a bike, right? Spin bike. When I realised we were going to be shut down, a mate of mine's got a gym, and he was hiring out all of his kit. So I said, I want to hire a spin bike. I didn't buy it because I didn't want it forever. So I've hired this for the foreseeable future. So my way of getting my mindset sorted is when I'm lying in bed thinking, oh, I can't be bothered, is to do 30, 40 minutes on here, which nearly kills me, but it's good for me because it means I'm doing something. And I do loads of thinking on there. My mind goes off and then I'm energy and, you know, blood flowing. And I think that's good for me. So whether it's time of day, I don't know, but I think certainly get your metabolism going. They say exercise is a great way to help you feel calmer and clearer. And so I've found that's always worked for me. Sport, anything when I'm exercising, whether that, and also at the start of this, just going, me and my wife going for really long walks, which I've never done. I'm not a great walker, but going off, walking around, sharing, talking, and then coming back to say, right, then I come straight in here. This is my office, which is in my garden. It used to be a garage. Come in here, sit down, and low-hanging fruit then for me, I don't want rejection first thing on a morning. Any salesperson will tell you that. You don't go and see a toughest customer first thing. See the best customer you've ever had who loves you and says, you're amazing, I love you, I want your product. And then phone your awkward customer up. And, you know, because then you're in a good mood then. I would never go to a miserable customer. I don't want to talk to a mood hoover first thing of the morning. So for me, I don't know if there's a time of day, but a bit of exercise just to get the blood flowing, walk or whatever works for you. And then while the blood's flowing, low-hanging fruit, make a contact, have a sociable interaction, and then your energy builds. And you'll get little wins, and when you get a win, it motivates you.
Steve, I'm going to add to that just a little bit, because what a lot of people do is lie in bed thinking about issues worrying about issues and not taking any action. And that's just as we're waking up, and that's just not a good idea. So if that's happening to anybody, and I'd add that into Ryan, I think you need to get up, get some energy, take some action, and then do whatever switches you on. I take a cup of coffee, go for a walk over to Starbucks, which is over the road. Haven't been able to do that recently. So I've actually been sitting by my potato patch, watching them grow and sending some LinkedIn messages. And people think I've gone bonkers, but that doesn't really matter because they're crazy messages. And I get the odd reply, which is great. And then I get on with it. But I think the danger is people start thinking negatively. And I do think there's a danger that some people think negatively first thing in the morning. And the only other thing I would add is some people are morning people, some people are evening people. You usually know from that when you were at university or whatever you did. Some of us, we didn't go to university, but work out what you are and then use your best times. Absolutely 100% though, Steve. You don't want rejection first thing in the morning. You need momentum, don't you? In the moment, momentum. And that happens with any sport. Once the momentum's flowing, we go for it. Back to you, Steve.
So I was going to say, I just read a comment. I had a little chance while you were there. I don't normally read these. I very rarely read comments in the middle of my thing, but one of them is, I would say it's from Elvira, I would say you don't have enough space to move around. I know what you're saying. I mean, in an ideal world, I would have a huge stage and I'd have a setup. But given what I have got, right, and also the distance from here for you to see me, right, there's only so much. I mean, I could come all the way back here and run up and down for you, but I realise it's a bit confined, but it's enough to create some energy, right? It's enough. And the funny thing was, on Friday, I got invited to Wimbledon by Vistage. Has anybody heard of work with Vistage at all? The chief exec group, right? And they were doing their first virtual executive summit, VES, they called it. And they had 700 plus chief execs and staff logging in. And I was invited to open that, which I was quite a privileged slot to get. So, and it was great because it was going to Wimbledon to an amazing place called White Light. Right, very, very good company. Bear with me one sec. I want to make sure I get this right because I want to do them justice. Yeah, that's it. They deserve a plug. They were brilliant. So that was their company, White Light, and they've got this. It's like, imagine a news studio when they talk to the people on the TVs. The whole screen at the back it's like that angle, and it's massive big walls. It's the size of a huge, twice the size of this whole area here, and everything's LED. So what you can see on the screen, that you see it as in the room, exactly the same as it is. You can have it set up any way you want. You can create any background you want. It's state of the art. And the funniest thing was, so I was first on, lady introduced me, Sally, she was brilliant. And I walked in, you've got a massive camera, 4 screens, you've got a countdown, and you're watching this high-tech digital. I had any background I wanted, so I chose the time bridge, right, to get myself feeling at home.
I understand why you did that.
I don't know why I did that. And then, and I start, my opening line was, I says, well, I've got the state-of-the-art technology. I couldn't be in a better room, and I've chosen to use one of these. And I did the thing on a flip chart, and I spent the whole time in that space. And all that stage was there, and I was going back and forth to the camera and said, I've got to show you this. And I was doing this, and I was going, and there's something else I want to show you. And I picked the book up, read a reference, and I came off the end, I thought, I've got used to confinement, but as long as you can move a bit, that's the key thing. And as long as there's some energy and it's real, it's not like you're making it up. I don't want to stand like a newsreader. I'm just me, being me, doing what I do and planning an event. And honestly, it was interesting, but I had so much space, and yet I just worked in this area because it works for me. But
Steve, the only reason I said that, because I've seen you deliver training in the room, and I know you like moving around, but you still can get that feeling and enthusiasm through the camera as well.
I know, but I seriously say, I think just you've got to use the space you've got, haven't you? And of course, I'd love a bit more, but you've just got to take what you have. What I would say is, there is a time and a place to sit down, and to be in a meeting mode, and where it's just you calm working with a group. And there's also a time when, if you're the presenter, whatever the reason you're presenting, like I've said to my daughter, if you're going to do auditions, some of her auditions are interview, who are you? I've said to her, do it standing up. Your energy is different standing up, whereas if you're sitting down, you'll slouch a bit. So be that performer that you are, and let them see you from here at least, so they get more of a view of you, as opposed to only saying that. It's just trying to get that magic. I don't know if I'm right, because 13 weeks ago, I'd never done this. But what I feel is when I get off the end of it, it feels like it's worked and the feedback's good. So I'm thinking I must be doing something, reasonably right. I'm sure people don't like it as well, but what we have is what we have. So
I think they do, Steve, actually. I just must share with everybody that for about 51 times I followed you on day 3 of an NHS course. And I'm teaching advanced negotiation masterclass to the same people that have had Steve for 2 days. So it took me about 10 times to work out how I was going to handle this with Steve's energy. Steve, he was fantastic. I'm tired from his energy, got loads of it. So I said, well, don't worry. I'm actually Steve Head on Valium. So it's going to be a quieter day. And that tends to build a bit of rapport, Steve. But sharing energy is something that leaders clearly need to do. And when we're speaking, when we're influencing people, when we're negotiating, we need to use that sensibly for the results that we need. And you do that fantastically well. And I don't know where you get your energy from, but it must be those Guinnesses you drink or that Newcastle Brown Ale. It probably is. I
don't drink beer, as it happens. I've never liked beer. I should do, shouldn't I? I should be a Newcastle. Do you know what, as well? You mentioned leadership. I think I was asked a question the other day. I've been asked a few times. I get asked, what's the one thing? There isn't really a one thing. But right now, if I was advising a business, if I only had 5 minutes and I couldn't really spend a lot of time, I would say constant, unending communication. Whether your staff are furloughed, whether they're working from home and normally in an office. A lot of people are feeling very remote, very left out, very concerned. They're not sure. And because out of sight, out of mind, I think sometimes the leaders and managers can be so busy trying to keep the ship afloat, they forget that regular contact is an important thing. So I think whatever your medium, whether it be Zoom, whether it be MS Teams, whatever the thing is, just get in touch with people on a regular basis. Leaders need to be talking to their people, even if they've got nothing to tell them. Just, I'm just letting you know we're all right, or it's tough times, but we'll keep you informed, because I think some organizations have forgotten to do that or aren't doing it as well as they might had you been in an office. And there are people working from home. Anecdotally, I've heard a lot of this through NHS and some of the clients I'm starting to coach on that, who are very lonely at home. Very, very lonely. So, and they're being told, actually, we've realized we can work from home now. This is brilliant. Let's not bother going back to the office. And for some people, that's a joy. And for others, that's a nightmare, because the only social contact they've got is working in an office. And if you turn around to somebody and say, never go back to an office again, they could be, they go, no, I'm waiting for this to end. I want to go back to the office. I actually want to be in a room with my comrades and be together. If you're a frontline worker and working in a shop or a restaurant, you've got to. But if you're working in an admin role, the answer isn't just let's keep it the same. And so communication is huge at the minute. Managing people and talking to them. My family, the secret, I don't know about you guys, but we've been in the same house for 12 weeks, 13 weeks, facing lots of emotions and ups and downs. I have bad days. My daughter has bad days. My wife has bad days. My son has bad days. But the one thing that I think we've always been quite good at is to talk to each other and sometimes leave each other alone if that's the right strategy. And so we be there for each other. And I think great leaders now should be showing that level of empathy towards their teams.
Steve, we're nearly coming to the end of the recording, but there's a couple of questions in the chat box, and then we'll have one last tip from you. Then I'll switch the recording off, and then perhaps you'd stay around for a little while to answer any questions that aren't on.
I will do. I'll hang around. Yeah.
From Thomas, how do you manage to engage NHS staff and their full attention with 149 when they are in their downtime, when they're resting? I guess. When
they're resting. How do I just engage them? I don't know. Does that mean when they're listening to me, or how did they take 149 home? Is that what that means? I don't know what that means. I can try answering both of those.
I think it's when they're resting from all these huge things that they've been dealing with, particularly emotional things, when they've been catching other people's emotions, having to share some.
I share techniques on mental resilience, and I share techniques on how we translate 149 into family life, and I show them how to change their mindset, partly some of this stuff up here. So, at the end of the day, the test for me is, so far the feedback has been 200 people logged in and 200 people stayed on for 2 hours. So they've all listened all the way through. Sure. So they're finding it relevant. And the feedback on the back of that is generally, I really enjoyed this session because it was for me and it was something I can take home tonight. It was something I can use when I get home. So they're seeing relevance both at work with their colleagues and they're seeing relevance outside of work. That to me is why it maintains their attention. They don't switch off because they're surprised that somebody's talking about something bigger than being a better nurse or being a better doctor or being a better accountant. You're talking about being a better mum and a dad and a sister and a brother, and here's how to do that. So that seems to be why they listen, they stay, and then they know they can apply it immediately in their lives outside of work. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the gist of what I think.
I think it probably does. Steve, the last question I want to ask you, and we'll end with this, and then we'll take the other questions afterwards, is, so how do you help people with their mental resilience? You haven't got one like your son, but what do you do? If someone comes up to you and says, I need help, Steve.
The big answer is coaching, because that's the frame, that's the theme of what I do for a living, really. All my sessions are based on that. And so it's about coaching them. It's about asking great questions, about being very curious. Any good coach is curious, aren't they? That's the one tip you've ever had if you've ever been coached, is be curious. Act like you know nothing, keep out the way and listen. That is the number one thing I learned as a coach, which is hard for me because I chat too much. So I've got to really concentrate on shutting up, being quiet, being present, paying attention, and then getting them to vent where they're at, get them to get stuff off their chest, and then help them think it through more rationally and calmly. That's pretty much my number one thing. So a big thread through all my material when I'm teaching at my sessions is, here's another way you can coach someone. Here's a way you can coach a friend. Here's how to think this through. So breaking it down, coaching, being curious if I'm coaching clients myself, and that seems to help, and being a good listener. That's it, really. Nothing clever.
Fantastic, Steve. Thanks very much for joining us today. I hope you'll come back and share some more of your secrets with us once we've all gone out and been let out, etc., etc. And if you'll stay on the line, that will be great. Steve Head, thanks for joining Derek Arden.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
If you're watching this on YouTube and you like it, please contact Steve. Please contact me. Like it on YouTube. Make some comments. That would be absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, and see you soon.